Today I'm going to talk about the three main types of disc injury. I think this is one of the most important things to know if you have a disc problem. Nerve pain is the most common to most of you. It's also known as sciatica. Sciatica is easy to diagnose compared to the other two categories of pain because one, it's the most widely recognized, and two, it's just so distinct because it's a spine problem that has a location of pain down the leg. Another reason this condition might be easier to diagnose is the MRI will typically show a disc bulge pushing along some part of the nerve. The next category of pain is rarely discussed. In fact, these next two are. Sensitization pain is pain that affects the tissues of the spine. So in contrast to the sciatica pain, it usually affects you somewhere on the back. It could be the middle of the back, off to one side, but it's usually going to be above the buttocks. This type of pain can happen from a range of tissues. Parts of the disc can get pain. The bone next to the disc, known as the vertebral bones, can feel pain. Ligaments and muscles can also contribute. Because of the range of tissues involved, this type of pain often has a vague quality. And some of you may feel that it feels muscular, others can say it's tightness, and many just kind of find that it defies easy explanation. The hallmark of this kind of pain is it tends to be prolonged. And so after something kind of upsets the back, it will stay on for at least minutes, but sometimes hours or longer. This type of pain is usually stressed by a cumulative load. So by which I mean doing some type of movement, doing some type of posture, like sitting all day in this chair. That is the type of load that can frequently trigger this type of sensitivity or sensitization pain. The third category of disc pain is known as instability. The easiest way to contrast instability pain with the other two types of pain is the suddenness of this type of pain. This type of pain, I like to describe, it goes from 0 to 100 in milliseconds, and it can disappear just as fast. The typical instability pain pattern is a sudden click, pop, or catching pain. One common scenario where it's triggered is when you roll over in the middle of the night and feel a sudden catch in your back. So now that you have this new mental model of sensitization, nerve pain, and instability, let's apply it to an actual case I saw several months ago. I saw this male in his 40s. He had a desk job and he was also very active with skiing, tennis, and golf. He found that his disc injury seemed mysterious because it would have this following pattern. He would try to put on his socks in the morning, and some days there'd be a sudden pain, a shooting pain down his leg for a split second, and for the rest of the day there'd be this aching soreness type pain. And so using this framework for understanding his pain, you can probably infer the suddenness is from instability. The instability was pinching a nerve for just a split second, and then there were tissues either getting stretched, pinched, or otherwise damaged from that instability event. For him, the recovery required a simple initial focus, which was identifying what caused his instability to occur. In his case, it was a sudden movement involving rolling his pelvis forward, as I'm doing right here. So I'll repeat that. I will roll the pelvis forward, arching his spine and triggering that cascade. So with this kind of cascade pattern, what I've observed is if we eliminate the trigger of the cascade, then suddenly there's no catching pain, there's no nerve pain, and its sensitized tissues don't get damaged and re-traumatized and more sensitive. Within 1 month of learning new movement pattern, he had reduced most of his pain. And at present, it's exceedingly rare for him to have an instability event. In fact, he states he hasn't actually had instability pain, and he hasn't had a shooting nerve pain since his initial coaching session. And all he has on occasion is sensitization pain. And so with his pattern, it looks like he's well on his way to recovery. One interesting wrinkle in his story is his MRI looked pretty darn good. There was evidence of disc injury, sure, but this disc didn't have any substantial bulge. It didn't look like it was going anywhere close to the nerve. And so when we think about the mechanisms, it makes sense because his nerve pain was not coming from the typical pattern of a disc bulge compressing on a nerve. It was coming from the instability, temporarily shifting, pinching the nerve for a split second, but messing up a bunch of tissues in the process. So I hope with this mental model that you're now better able to understand your disc pain. And if you're looking for a specific solution, I recommend checking out my book, Specific Spine, or reaching out to see if you're a good candidate for a consult with me at masterymedical.com.